and welcome to Live Parkinson's Live an Exceptional Life. I'm your host, Chris Custenbotter, and I've been living an exceptional life with Parkinson's for the past 15 years. Now, this podcast is dedicating to help you live an exceptional life with Parkinson's. Now, today we're exploring something that empowers you in a very tangible way, the neuroprotective potential of herbs and spices. So I want you to picture this. You're standing in your kitchen reaching for the turmeric to add to tonight's dinner, that golden powder in your hand. It might be doing more than just flavoring your food. What if I told you that the herbs and spices sitting in your cabinet right now, ordinary ingredients you probably already own, are being studied by scientists around the world for their potential to protect the very neurons affected by Parkinson's disease? Now, I'm not talking about some exotic supplement that you need to order from halfway across the globe. I'm talking about green tea, turmeric, ginger, everyday ingredients that could be part of your neuroprotective strategy. So today we're diving into the science, real, published, peer-reviewed research on how herbs and spices may help you protect your brain. So stay with me. This could change the way you think about your spice cabinet. Now, I want to be crystal clear from the start. I'm not talking about cures. I'm not suggesting you throw away your medications. What we're exploring today is what the science says about how certain natural compounds might support your brain health, complement your existing treatment, and potentially slow disease progression. And that's the key word, potentially. Now, here's what makes this topic so exciting. Unlike medications that primarily manage symptoms, some herbs and spices show promise in actually protecting dopaminergic neurons, the very cells that Parkinson's affects. They work through multiple mechanisms by reducing inflammation, helping to fight oxidative stress, helping to prevent toxic protein buildup, and even supporting your mitochondria. Now, the best part, these aren't just pharmaceutical interventions that cost thousands of dollars. Many of these things you might already have in your kitchen, or you can just go and pick up at the grocery store. So, what we're going to do is we're going to explore the research, study by study, and mechanism by mechanism, and we'll talk about turmeric and its active compound curcumin, green tea and powerful EGCG, and several other herbs that show real promise. We'll look at what works, what doesn't, and most importantly, how to safely integrate this knowledge into your daily life. All right, now before we dive in, I have a disclaimer that the information being provided is for informational purposes only and is not for the diagnosis or treatment of Parkinson's disease, and it's based on my own personal research. All right, before we dive into specific herbs and spices, I think it's important that we need to understand what we mean when we talk about neuroprotection. So think of your brain as a city, and your neurons as the building and roads that make that city function. In Parkinson's disease, specific buildings in a particular neighborhood, the dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra, are being damaged and destroyed. Now, traditional medications are like emergency services, helping the city function despite the damage. But what if we could protect those buildings from being damaged in the first place? That's neuroprotection. Now, the Parkinson's Foundation describes neuroprotection as the process of supporting brain cell health and their ability to communicate with one another. It's about keeping those neurons alive, keeping them healthy, and maintaining the connections between them. Now, how does this damage happen in the first place? Well, there's several key mechanisms, and here's where it gets interesting, because the herbs and spices we're discussing today target those exact mechanisms. The first is oxidative stress. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's oxygen, even though it's only about 2% of your body weight. All that oxygen metabolizes and can create free radicals, which are unstable molecules that damage cells. It's like rust forming on metal. Now, in Parkinson's, this oxidative damage is particularly severe in dopamine-producing neurons. All right, second is inflammation. Chronic inflammation in the brain, neuroinflammation, creates a hostile environment for neurons. So it's like the city dealing with constant fires. The inflammatory response that's supposed to protect you actually ends up causing collateral damage. Third is protein aggregation. Now, in Parkinson's, there's a protein called alpha-synuclein, and that misfolds and clumps together, and it forms toxic aggregates called Lewy bodies. So think of it like trash accumulating in your cells and gumming up the machinery. Fourth, mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the power plants of your cells. So when they don't work properly, neurons don't get the energy they need to survive. And then fifth is iron accumulation. Excess iron in the brain can catalyze the production of more free radicals, creating a vicious cycle of damage. Now, here's where our story gets really interesting. There's a fascinating epidemiological observation that researchers have noticed. The incidence of neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's, is significantly lower in Asian populations compared to Western populations. There was a groundbreaking study published in the journal Molecules that noted people living in the Asian subcontinent, where people regularly consume spices, have a much lower incidence of these diseases than people in the Western countries. Now, is this entirely due to spices? Of course not. Genetics play a role, lifestyle factors matter, but when you start looking at the research on specific compounds in these spices, curcumin from turmeric, EGCG from green tea, gingerol from ginger, you find that they target these exact mechanisms of neurodegeneration that we just talked about. They're antioxidants fighting free radicals. They're anti-inflammatory, calming neuroinflammation, and some actually prevent alpha-synuclein from aggregating into toxic clumps. And then others support mitochondrial function or help remove excess iron from the brain. Now, in 2011, researchers published a comprehensive review in the journal Phytotherapy Research titled Neuroprotection by Spice-Derived Nutraceuticals, You Are What You Eat. Now, they examined spices including turmeric, red pepper, black pepper, licorice, clove, ginger, garlic, coriander, and cinnamon, and found that these spices target inflammatory pathways that may prevent neurodegenerative diseases. So it isn't just folk medicine or wishful thinking. These are measurable, quantifiable effects demonstrated in laboratory studies, animal models, and increasingly in human trials. Now, does this mean that sprinkling turmeric on your food will cure Parkinson's? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is that we have evidence-based reasons to believe that incorporating these compounds into your diet might support your brain health and potentially influence disease progression. And again, that's the key word, potentially. So that brings us to our first superstar. Now, if there's one spice that has captured the attention of neuroscientists studying Parkinson's disease, it's turmeric, and specifically a compound within turmeric called curcumin. Now, if you walk into any Indian or South Asian kitchen, you'll find turmeric. It's that vibrant golden yellow powder that stains everything that it touches. Now, for thousands of years, it's been used not just as a spice, but as a medicine. And now modern science is discovering why. Curcumin is a polyphenolic compound. So basically, it's a plant-based molecule with powerful biological activity. And when researchers started investigating its effects on the brain, they found something remarkable. There was a comprehensive review in the journal Nutrients, and it states that curcumin has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and neuroprotective effects that can be useful in treating Parkinson's disease. But here's what makes curcumin truly special. It's not a one-trick pony. It works through multiple mechanisms simultaneously. All right, so let's break it down. Mechanism one, preventing toxic protein buildup. Now, remember those Lewy bodies I just mentioned, the toxic clumps of alpha-synuclein protein? Well, researchers at Michigan State University, led by Dr. Basir Ahmad, discovered something fascinating. Curcumin can actually disrupt the proteins responsible for Parkinson's disease and prevent these proteins from aggregating together in the first place. Now, think of alpha-synuclein like sticky rice. Normally, the grains should stay somewhat separate, but in Parkinson's, they start clumping together in dense, toxic balls. Curcumin essentially keeps the grains from sticking together. Now, this isn't theoretical. They've observed this in laboratory studies, watching in real time as curcumin prevents alpha-synuclein from forming those dangerous clumps. All right, mechanism number two is antioxidant powerhouse. Now, here's something that should make you sit up and take notice. Curcumin is more powerful antioxidant than vitamins C and E. So how does it work? Well, at the molecular level, curcumin has a special chemical structure called beta-diketone moiety. Now, I know that sounds like something from organic chemistry class, and if you haven't had organic chemistry class, you probably don't want to take it. But here's what matters. This structure allows curcumin to donate hydrogen ions to neutralize free radicals. So your brain is particularly vulnerable to oxidative damage because of all that oxygen it consumes. And then free radicals are going to accumulate over time, damaging your mitochondria, which are your cell's power plants. And it's going to reduce ATP production and ultimately lead to neuronal death. Now, curcumin steps in and neutralizes those free radicals before they can do damage. It's like having a cleanup crew constantly sweeping your neurons, removing the toxic waste before it accumulates. All right, mechanism 3 is calming inflammation. Chronic neuroinflammation is like a smoldering fire in your brain. It doesn't just damage neurons directly, it creates an environment where neurons can't thrive. Curcumin is a potent anti-inflammatory compound. So it modulates inflammatory pathways, it reduces pro-inflammatory cytokines, and it helps create a healthier environment for your neurons. Now, here's where this gets really exciting, the human studies. In 2022, there was a groundbreaking clinical trial that was published in the Journal of Neuropathology and Experimental Neurology. Researchers in Italy, led by Dr. Vincenzo Donadio, conducted a year-long study with Parkinson's patients, and the results were striking. They divided patients into two groups. One group received curcumin supplementation for 12 months. The other group didn't. Both groups continued their normal medications. And here's what happened. The patients taking the curcumin, despite keeping their levodopa dose stable, showed improvement in non-motor symptoms. Meanwhile, the control group, the ones that were not taking curcumin, showed the expected worsening of motor symptoms and had to increase their levodopa dosage. So let me repeat that. The curcumin group maintained stable medication doses while showing improvement, and the control group needed more medication and still got worse. The researchers also did something innovative. They took skin biopsies to look at the accumulation of misfolded alpha-synuclein in peripheral nerves. This gave them a biomarker, a measurable indicator of disease progression happening at the cellular level. Now, just this year, 2025, or this past year, a systemic review was published in Frontiers in Pharmacology, analyzing the available clinical trials on curcumin and Parkinson's. The review included 2 randomized controlled trials and 1 cohort study totaling 125 patients. Their conclusion? Curcumin, particularly in formulations that enhance its bioavailability, may be beneficial as an add-on treatment for Parkinson's, potentially, again, that's the key word, improving non-motor symptoms and slowing the advancement of motor dysfunction. All right, so let me pause here and address the elephant in the room, and that's bioavailability. And what's that mean? Well, that means how much is going to be available for your body to use. Now, curcumin has one major problem. When you eat turmeric and curry, most of the curcumin doesn't actually get absorbed into your bloodstream. It's poorly soluble in water, meaning it doesn't dissolve in water very easily, and your digestive system breaks it down quickly. This is why many early studies using regular turmeric powder didn't show the dramatic effects. The curcumin simply wasn't getting to where it needed to go. But science has been working on this problem. The study showing positive results in Parkinson's patients used enhanced formulations, nano curcumin, curcumin combined with heparin from black pepper, or curcumin in oil-based solutions. Now, these formulations dramatically improve how much curcumin actually makes it into your bloodstream and, crucially, into your brain. Now, the clinical trials typically used 80 milligrams per day of these bioavailable formulations. Now, that's a very specific dose of a very specific type of curcumin, not just sprinkling turmeric on your food. So, what's the practical takeaway here? Well, first, incorporating turmeric in your cooking is a good idea. The traditional combination of turmeric with black pepper in Indian cuisine isn't just for flavor. The pepperine and black pepper can increase curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. So if you're using turmeric, make sure that you add some black pepper in there as well to help with absorption. Golden milk. Now, this is a traditional drink made with turmeric, milk, or plant-based milk, black pepper, and often a bit of healthy fat. And it's a delicious way to get your curcumin in a more bioavailable form. Now, if you're considering supplementation, which clinical trials suggest might have some significant effects, you need to talk to your neurologist or movement disorder specialist because curcumin can interact with medications. Some people experience gastrointestinal upset, and if they give you the approval, you want to choose a high quality supplement with proven bioavailability. Now, while the research on curcumin is promising, it's not definitive and it's not a cure, but it's showed some promising results, and that's something worth paying attention to. All right, next up is green tea. Now, let's talk about something that you might already be drinking, and that's green tea. For thousands of years, green tea has been revered in Asian cultures, not just as a beverage, but as medicine. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that says, "It's better to be deprived of food for 3 days than tea for one." And now, modern neuroscience is revealing why this humble drink might deserve such reverence. Green tea, also known in the scientific terms as Camellia sinensis, contains a family of compounds called catechins. Now, these polyphenolic antioxidants, and they're incredibly powerful. But here's what's really fascinating about green tea. It contains almost 4 times the concentration of catechins compared to black tea. And the difference is really in the processing. Black tea is fermented, which oxidizes these catechins and converts them into other compounds. Green tea is minimally processed, preserving these powerful molecules. And the most abundant, most studied, and most powerful of these catechins is one with a mouthful of a name, and I'm going to go for it. It's called epigallocatechin 3 gallate. So let's just call it EGCG. EGCG is the star of the show, and it makes up about 50 to 80% of the catechins in green tea. Now, when researchers started investigating what EGCG does in the brain, they uncovered something extraordinary. The blood-brain barrier is where EGCG gets where it needs to go. Now, here's a crucial point. For any compound to protect your brain, it actually has to get across to be able to reach your brain. And your body has a remarkable defense system called the blood-brain barrier. So it's essentially a selective filter that protects your brain from potentially harmful substances entering from the bloodstream into the brain. Now, this is great for protection, but sometimes it's a major hurdle for treatments because many drugs can't cross this barrier. But EGCG can. Pharmacokinetic studies that show how compounds track through your body, have shown that EGCG is readily absorbed from your digestive tract and can be widely distributed to various organs, including the brain. And peak plasma concentrations occur about 1.3 to 1.6 hours after you drink green tea. Now, the fact that EGCG crosses the blood-brain barrier and actually reaches the brain tissue is crucial. It means it isn't just a theoretical benefit. EGCG can get to the neurons that need protecting. ECGC protects your brain using 4 different key mechanisms. Mechanism 1 is remodeling toxic proteins. Like curcumin, EGCG has a remarkable ability to deal with alpha-synuclein aggregation, but it does it in a slightly different way. Research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences showed that EGCG can actually remodel mature alpha-synuclein fibrils, those toxic clumps I keep mentioning, into non-toxic aggregates through non-covalent interactions. So think of it this way. Imagine those toxic protein clumps are like tangled balls of yarn, creating knots that just jam up your cellular machinery. EGCG comes in and restructures them into a harmless form. So these proteins are still there, but they're no longer toxic. And this is huge because it suggests that EGCG might not just prevent new toxic aggregates from forming, but it might actually help deal with the ones that already exist. Mechanism 2 is what they call iron chelation. Now, remember when I mentioned earlier that iron accumulation as one of the mechanisms of damage in Parkinson's? Well, this is where EGCG does something really clever. Excess iron in the brain catalyzes the production of free radicals through something called the Fenton reaction. So It's like iron is a catalyst for creating cellular rust. But EGCG can chelate iron, especially grab onto the iron ions and prevent them from catalyzing this destructive reaction. There was a study of mice that showed that EGCG treatment increased motor coordination, boosted dopamine concentration, and enhanced expression of ferroportin, which is a protein that helps remove excess iron from the cells. And the same study found that EGCG could restore normal expression of iron-regulating proteins that get disrupted in Parkinson's. It's helping maintain iron homeostasis, which is essentially the right balance of iron in the brain. Mechanism 3, it's a powerful antioxidant activity. EGCG is one of the most potent natural antioxidants we know of. It scavenges multiple types of free radicals, reducing oxidative stress throughout the brain. But it's not just neutralizing free radicals after they form. EGCG actually modulates the cellular pathways that control oxidative stress. So it's like turning down the volume on the process that's generate free radicals in the first place. And then mechanism 4 is anti-inflammatory action. EGCG reduces the expression of pro-inflammatory cytokines while promoting anti-inflammatory responses. All right, the research from the Petri dish into living models, because it's nice that it works well in the lab, but how does it work actually in either animal or human studies? Does it actually work in living organisms? Well, let me tell you about a study that just came out last year that was 2024 that was published in the journal Neuroprotection. And this study is important because of the model they used. Most Parkinson's research uses what they call acute models. You give an animal a neurotoxin and see what happens over days or weeks. The problem with that is that Parkinson's isn't an acute disease. It's a chronic, progressive, and it develops over years and decades. So these researchers, led by Dr. Jian Sen and colleagues, use something different, a chronic Parkinson's model induced by alpha-synuclein free-form fibrils. Now, this more accurately mimics how Parkinson's actually develops in humans, a slow, progressive accumulation of toxic alpha-synuclein. Now, they divided the mice into 3 groups. There was a control group, a Parkinson's model group, and a group that received EGCG before and during the disease induction. Then they tracked these mice for 6 months, a substantial portion of the mouse's lifespan, conducting behavioral tests at 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. And the results were striking. The mice that received the EGCG showed reduced anxiety-like behavior. They maintained better motor function, and when the research examined their brains at the end of the study, they found that EGCG had prevented the loss of dopaminergic neurons, the very cells that die in Parkinson's disease. Now, even more impressive, EGCG reduced the accumulation of what they call phosphorylated alpha-synuclein, the toxic form, in both the substantia nigra and the striatum, the 2 brain regions most affected by Parkinson's. Now, the researchers also measured inflammatory markers. EGCG reduced pro-inflammatory cytokines and promoted anti-inflammatory cytokines, showing that the anti-inflammatory effect that we see in test tubes actually translates into living brain tissue. Their conclusion? EGCG exerts a neuroprotective effect on the long-term progression of Parkinson's disease models, with potential value as a clinical preventive intervention. Now, there was another significant study that was published in 2015 in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine, and it looked at green tea extract in a different Parkinson's model. Now, this model was called 6-OHDA, and it was a model that they used in rats. And they found that green tea extract and its catechins significantly reversed the decreases in striatal dopamine that occur in this model, and that the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties translated directly to neuroprotection. All right, that's nice, but let's talk about the human connection. Now, I know what you're thinking. These are mouse studies, rat studies, but what about humans? So here's where the epidemiological studies come in. Large-scale population studies have found an association between regular green tea consumption and reduced risk of Parkinson's disease. There was a comprehensive review published in Molecules in 2020 that noted that several human observational studies have found beneficial effects of tea consumption on neurodegenerative impairment, including reduced risk of Parkinson's. And a study published by the Parkinson's Foundation notes that some research suggests that drinking 3 cups of green tea daily may be neuroprotective because EGCG is both an anti-inflammatory agent and an antioxidant. Now, there was even a clinical trial conducted in China with the support from the Michael J. Fox Foundation that evaluated green tea polyphenols' ability to slow disease progression in early Parkinson's. Now, while that particular trial didn't show significant differences after 1 year, it's important to note that 1 year might not be long enough to see the full effects of neuroprotective intervention. Because remember, Parkinson's develops over decades, so expecting dramatic changes in 12 months might be a little bit unrealistic. All right, so how do we get EGCG? First, drink green tea. Not black tea, not oolong, green tea specifically. 3 cups a day seems to be the sweet spot that shows up consistently in research. But how you brew it matters. Water that's too hot, boiling water, can destroy some of the catechins. You want your water around 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you want to steep it for 2 to 3 minutes. And any longer, and you're extracting more of the bitter compounds without getting more of the beneficial catechins. Second, consider matcha. Matcha is a powdered whole green tea leaves. So when you drink matcha, you're consuming the entire leaf, not just what steeps out in hot water. And this gives you a more concentrated dose of the catechins, including EGCG. Third, timing matters. Some research suggests that consuming green tea between meals rather than with meals may enhance absorption and reduce any potential interference with iron absorption from food, though this is more relevant for people concerned about anemia, which is less common in Parkinson's. And then here's an important caveat. Green tea contains caffeine, so if you're sensitive to caffeine or it worsens your tremor, you might need to limit your consumption or switch to a decaffeinated green tea, which still contains catechins, but in just slightly lower amounts. And then also, while green tea consumed as a beverage is very safe, green tea extract supplements in very high doses have been associated with liver toxicity in some cases. So the key word here is very high doses. So drinking 3 to 5 cups of green tea a day has excellent safety profile supported by thousands of years of use and modern clinical studies. So the bottom line on green tea, the evidence for green tea and EGCG is compelling. Multiple mechanisms of neuroprotection demonstrated in lab studies, animal models, and supported by epidemiological data in humans. It's accessible, affordable, and has an excellent safety profile when consumed as a beverage. Is it a miracle cure? No. But is it scientifically supported, practical intervention that you can implement today? Absolutely. All right, now let's take a look at some of the other notable herbs and spices. Now, while turmeric have the most robust research behind them, they're not the only players in the neuroprotection game. So let's explore some other herbs and spices that show genuine promise. And the first one's ginger, the anti-inflammatory root. Now, ginger is turmeric's cousin. They're both what they call rhizomes, which are underground stems. And like turmeric, ginger has been used medicinally for thousands of years. A Japanese study using a mouse model of Parkinson's disease found that zingerone, a compound found in ginger root, may have a protective effect on dopamine-containing neurons. The mechanism appears to be anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. But here's a practical benefit that anyone with Parkinson's can appreciate right now. Ginger is remarkably effective for nausea. The Parkinson's Foundation notes that nibbling small pieces of crystallized ginger at the first sign of queasiness can provide relief. Now, many people with Parkinson's experience gastrointestinal issues, either from the disease itself or the side effects from medications. Having ginger, whether it's crystallized ginger, ginger tea, fresh ginger in cooking, or I personally like pickled ginger as well, is a simple, evidence-based way to address this common challenge. So add fresh ginger to stir fries, steep it in hot water for tea, or keep crystallized ginger in your bag. It's neuroprotection and symptom relief in one package. All right, next up is ginkgo biloba. You might have heard this with memory, so we'll call it the memory tree. Ginkgo biloba is one of the oldest living tree species on Earth, and is believed to have been used in traditional Chinese medicine for millennia. Now, modern research has confirmed that ginkgo has the potential antioxidant properties. But what makes it interesting for Parkinson's specifically is research conducted at the National Institute of Neurology and Neurosurgery in Mexico in 2012. They used a patented extract of ginkgo leaves in an animal model of Parkinson's disease. The extract showed both neuroprotective and neurorecovery effects against midbrain dopamine neuron damage. It even helped with damage to locomotion or the ability to move. The researchers were optimistic, declaring, "These studies suggest it's an alternative to the future treatment of Parkinson's." Now, ginkgo supplements are widely available, but as with all supplements, quality is going to vary tremendously. So if you're considering ginkgo, first ask your neurologist or your movement disorder specialist if it's right for you. And if they give you the approval, look for standardized extracts and make sure that you review it with your doctor, because also ginkgo can interact with blood thinners and other medications. All right, the wisdom of traditional medicine, Eastern herbs. Now let's talk about some of the herbs that have been used for centuries in traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine and are now being validated by modern science. The first one is called Mucuna pruriens, the velvet bean. And this is a fascinating one because Mucuna pruriens, also known as the velvet bean, has been used in medicine for thousands of years, specifically for conditions involving tremor and rigidity. Why? Because it naturally contains L-DOPA. Yes, the same compound that's synthesized for our Parkinson's medications. But here's what's interesting. Research suggests that Mucuna pruriens may be more than just a natural source of L-DOPA. It contains multiple bioactive compounds, including proanthocyanidin, tannin, gallic acid, quercetin, and phytic acid. And a comprehensive review published in PMC noted that compared to synthetic L-DOPA, Mucuna pruriens is more protective of nerve cells and also possesses pain-relieving, anti-inflammatory, anti-neuroplastic, and antimicrobial characteristics. The alkaloids, phenolic compounds, tannin, and flavonoids in Mucuna pruriens could also halt the neuroinflammation through multiple pathways. Now, this doesn't mean you should stop taking your prescribed medicines and switch to the velvet bean. The dosing isn't standardized and the L-DOPA content can vary. And it hasn't been tested in rigorous clinical trials that the pharmacological, but it's a reminder that traditional medicine identified these benefits long before we had the technology to understand why they worked. All right, the next one is Indian ginseng, also called ashwagandha. And this herb has been Ayurvedic medicine for over 5,000 years for neurological deficits, including poor memory, depression, and neurodegeneration. Now, the active compound called withanolides have a similar chemical structure to gissenicides from Paksang ginseng, which is why it's often called Indian ginseng. Now, research on the Indian ginseng in Parkinson's models has shown it possesses antioxidant, free radical scavenging, and anti-inflammatory properties. In one mouse model of Parkinson's, root extract significantly decreased oxidative stress markers and reduced activation of anti-inflammatory cells in the brain tissue. Now, the challenge with Indian ginseng is that while it's been used traditionally for millennia, strong scientific evidence for its safe and effective use in Parkinson's is still being established. It's currently sold as a dietary supplement rather than a regulated medication. The next one up is Panax ginseng, or the Qi booster. Korean and Chinese ginseng have been extensively studied. The active compounds, gissenicides, have shown neuroprotective effects in laboratory studies. Now, in models of Parkinson's, ginseng extract decreased the overproduction of reactive oxygen species and increased cell survival. So it appears to work by supporting mitochondrial function, which is helping the powerhouse of the cell, and reducing oxidative stress. A fascinating 2013 review published in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine examined bioactive ingredients from herbal medicines across different chemical classes: terpenes, flavonoids, stilbenoids, and phenolic compounds, and coumarins. Now, the review noted that All of the bioactive compounds they examined demonstrated significant neuroprotective effects in Parkinson's models, suggesting that the natural sources could be valuable for developing anti-Parkinson's drugs. All right, now, here's something that should reshape how you think about cooking. In 2011, there was a study in the journal Phytotherapy, and the research examined common culinary spices, not exotic herbs, but things probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Turmeric, red pepper, black pepper, licorice, clove, ginger, garlic, coriander, and cinnamon all target inflammatory pathways that may prevent neurodegenerative diseases. So think about it. These aren't supplements that you have to special order. They're the ingredients that you can add to tonight's dinner. Black pepper, for instance, contains piperine, which not only has anti-inflammatory properties of its own, but also dramatically enhances the absorption of curcumin from turmeric, which is why traditional Indian cooking almost always contains these two types of spices. Cinnamon contains compounds that reduce oxidative stress. Garlic has sulfur compounds with neuroprotective properties. Rosemary, sage, oregano all contain polyphenols with antioxidant activity. Now, a word of caution. Now, before you start buying every herb supplement you can find, let me be very clear. More is not better, and supplements are not the same as food. Many of these herbs, when concentrated into supplement form, can have side effects or interact with medications. The FDA does not regulate supplements with the same rigor as medications, so purity and potency can vary wildly between brands. The safest approach is focused on incorporating these herbs and spices into your diet through food first. Use turmeric and ginger in cooking, drink green tea, season your food with a variety of herbs and spices. Now, if you're considering concentrated supplement, that's a conversation that you need to have with your neurologist or movement disorder specialist and a registered dietitian who specializes in neurological conditions. They can help you navigate dose, quality, and potential interactions and whether supplementation makes sense for your specific condition. Okay, now we've covered a lot of science. Now let's talk about what you can actually do with this information safely, practically, and in a way that fits into your real life. Because here's the thing. You can have all the research in the world showing that something works in a petri dish or a mouse, but if it doesn't translate to practical action, it really doesn't help you. So let's try to make this actionable. So here's how you can build your daily routine. In the morning, start with green tea. So instead of your morning coffee, or alongside it if you really need that coffee, consider making green tea your morning ritual. And here's how to do it right. Heat the water to about 175 degrees, and if you don't have a thermometer, bring the water to a boil and let it sit and cool for a couple minutes. Add your green tea leaves or bag and then steep for 2 to 3 minutes, no longer, and then remove the tea leaves. That first cup in the morning, then perhaps maybe another one mid-morning, and a third in the early afternoon. 3 cups daily, that's the dose that keeps showing up in research. Now, if you want to get really fancy, try matcha. A teaspoon of matcha powder whisked into hot water gives you a more concentrated dose of catechins. Plus, it becomes trendy enough that you can find good quality matcha at most grocery stores now. All right, can't handle the caffeine? I know I can't. Decaffeinated green tea still contains the beneficial catechins, just slightly lower levels, so it's a viable option. Now, in the afternoon, consider making either the golden milk that I talked about earlier or have some turmeric tea. Here's a simple recipe. You can warm a cup of milk, dairy or plant-based, your choice. Add half to 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, a pinch of black pepper, which again is critical for absorption, and maybe a small amount of coconut oil or ghee, and honey or other sweetener if you like. Whisk it together, warm it, and enjoy. Now, the fat from milk and the oil helps the absorption of curcumin. The black pepper dramatically enhances bioavailability, and it's delicious, earthly, and slightly sweet and warming. Now, some people prefer this in the evening as a calming bedtime ritual, and that works too. But the key is consistency. All right, now let's talk about in the kitchen. Cook with purpose. Start thinking of herbs and spices not just as flavoring agents, but as functional ingredients. Sautéing onions and garlic, add turmeric and black pepper. The heat and fat from the cooking may actually help release and make more bioavailability some of the beneficial compounds. If you're making a soup or stew, add some fresh ginger, grate it, slice it, mince it. Not only does it add flavor, but you're getting your zingerone and other neuroprotective compounds. Roasting vegetables. Toss them with olive oil, add some rosemary, sage, or oregano. All these herbs contain polyphenols with antioxidant properties. Now, the beautiful thing about this approach is that you're not adding tasks to your day, you're just making your regular cooking more therapeutic. Now, let's talk a little bit about snacks. Keep crystallized ginger in your bag or car, so when you feel nauseous, whether from Parkinson's itself, from medications, or just life, add a small piece of ginger, and that can help. You're getting a little zingerone at the same time. Now, let's talk about supplements. If you're considering concentrated supplements of any of these herbs or compound, here's your checklist. Step 1, you need to talk to your medical team, and this is non-negotiable. Herbs and spices, especially in supplement form, can interact with medications. Ginkgo can interact with blood thinners. Turmeric in high doses may affect medications metabolized by the liver, and some herbs can influence how your body processes levodopa. So your neurologist or movement disorder specialist needs to know what you're taking, not just for safety, but because if you start feeling better, they need to know whether it's the medication adjustment or a supplement that's making the difference. And then step 2, understand that quality matters. The FDA does not strictly regulate herbs and supplements. And let me read you this important caveat from the Parkinson's Foundation. There is no guarantee of safety, strength, or purity of supplements not monitored by the FDA. So what does this mean practically? 2 bottles of curcumin or ginkgo extract sitting next to each other on a store shelf might contain wildly different amounts of the active compound. One might be pure, the other might be contaminated. So look for third-party testing, whether that's USP, NSF, or consumer lab certification. Standardized extracts. Specific percentage of the active compounds are listed. Reputable brands that have been around for a while, and then products specifically tested for contaminants. Yes, these usually cost more, but you're putting this into your body to support your brain health. This is not where you go and want to bargain hunt. Step 3, know the doses. The clinical trials showing the benefits in Parkinson's use specific doses. Curcumin was 80 milligrams per day of bioavailable formulation, and green tea, it was the equivalent of 3 cups daily. So more is not necessarily better. Some compounds can be harmful at high doses. Green tea extracts, supplements in very high doses, again, have been associated with liver toxicity. And then step 4, start one thing at a time. Don't overhaul your entire supplement regimen overnight. Start with one intervention, maybe adding green tea to your routine. Give it a few weeks. Notice how you feel. Then if you want to add another element, that this way, if something doesn't agree with you, you know exactly what caused the problem. And then safety considerations that you need to know. Timing with medications. Some research suggests that protein-rich foods can interfere with levodopa absorption. While the herbs we've discussed aren't high in protein, some supplements are taken with food. So ask your doctor whether timing matters for any supplements that you're taking. And then potential side effects. Curcumin. Some people experience nausea, diarrhea, and gastrointestinal upset. Green tea. Again, caffeine sensitivity, which can cause sleep disturbance if consumed late in the day, and rare cases of liver issues with very high dose supplements. And then ginkgo. It can increase bleeding risk, especially if you're on blood thinners. All right, food first philosophy. Now, here's my strong recommendation. You want to prioritize food sources over supplements whenever possible. There was a 2017 study by Dr. Lori Mishley involving 1,053 people with Parkinson's and found that fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts and seeds, non-fried fish, olive oil, wine, coconut oil, and fresh herbs and spices were all associated with a reduced rate of Parkinson's progression. Now, what's on that list? Whole foods, fresh herbs and spices, not pills. So when you eat these foods, you're not just getting curcumin or EGCG, you're getting hundreds of other beneficial compounds, fiber, and nutrients all working together in ways that we don't fully understand, but that evolution has optimized over the millennium. So none of this matters if you can't sustain it. Don't try to be perfect. Don't stress if you miss a day of green tea or forget to add turmeric to your dinner. Think of this as a gentle, gradual shift in how you eat and drink. Over time, these small changes are going to become habits. Habits become lifestyle, and lifestyle is what's going to influence your long-term outcomes. So start small. Maybe this week, just add a cup of green tea to your morning routine. Next week, you experiment with golden milk. The week after, you start cooking more intentionally with turmeric and ginger. Small steps, consistently taken, create significant change over time. And remember, always consult with your neurologist or movement disorder specialist so that they know exactly what you're taking and so they know that whether it's going to interact with your medications. I want to thank you for listening. But before you go, please visit liveparkinsons.com and sign up for the free monthly newsletter. And there's other resources and some valuable tools on there as well. And if you want to support the program, please visit my Ko-fi page at kofi.com/liveparkinsons or click on the support the show link in the notes. And I want to thank you for listening. And remember, until next time, stay healthy, stay strong, and keep living your best life with Parkinson's. Thanks again.